right, everybody, this is Steve Schmidt. Welcome back to the Magnetic Podcast. We are playing around with a little Zen over here. As you can see, every week we have a new set. And really what that means is it's me on a Sunday toying around, thinking about the guests that I have coming up, what lighting would best represent them. And when I did a little bit of research on Mac, I was like, we're going to get a little Zen on this podcast. And I thought, Mac, you actually gave me this content idea where wouldn't it be great for a podcast if you came onto the podcast and it was just all your shit behind me, like pictures of you, like we did all this research and you're just like, oh my God, that's my childhood baseball photo. That would be engaging. That would be shocking.
And it would certainly be
a lot of research. But Mac, here's how I met you. And this is always a story that I try and get people to follow because this is how we all get to meet each other, right? I had heard your name for years, like a lot of people. Didn't know what you did, like a lot of people. And I think we forget that, double click, like, oh yeah, by the way, we got to tell people what we do, how we do it, how it can make their lives better. And I want to talk about that big time on like, let's not forget that we have to do that in content. But I kept hearing this name. And then we had Neil Weitzman on this podcast, I believe guest 28. And Neil just raved about you. And Neil's kind of a picky guy. You know, I mean, I've worked with Neil. Neil's hired my firm before. He is not the easiest customer. I love him to death. So I'm like, okay, so if he likes this tool, it's a tool that I should use. And I literally went and clicked and bought. And that's the power of social proof. I know Neil. I trust Neil. I know he's a hard critic. So I hit buy, right? And then a couple of days later, I'm onboarding. And now the story of Mac is coming to life. And I'm like, this all makes sense now. This is his product. This is where we have arrived with what I know as Bronto. So Mac, welcome to the show. Hopefully that story tells a little bit from an outsider's non-biased perspective of how people see you. And hopefully it makes you feel good about yourself because we never really know how people come to find us, right?
It's great. It's like our entire thesis behind our product laid out in a real world story.
Yeah. Well, there's a case study. So we'll get a micro for that, right?
Yeah.
And we hear a lot of these things like near bound, right? Affiliates. I don't think Neil got an affiliate. I mean, Neil was just being Neil, right? And I think that to your point, let's talk about that. Peel apart what Bronto is for the listeners. How can it help them? And what is the promise that if they click buy or they try your product, that they're not going to be downloading yet another Chrome extension that they remove 2 days later?
So counterintuitively, this goes against like all traditional startup advice of like have one really good message. I have two because Bronto is a personal product and a team product, which is also not super typical for go-to-market tech or really most products. Like sometimes there's a product-led version, but we're like sort of separate products. So on the personal side, it's like I always like the story of like if you were a salesperson in the 80s, you likely would have had a physical Rolodex that would have gone with you from job to job throughout your career and had this compounding effect.
Yeah.
Nowadays, people don't have that. The last 20 years has been about like buy data, get a list, do some stuff, put some notes in a CRM, put some notes in LinkedIn Sales Nav. Then you lose your job or you leave and you start over again at the next company. Like, yes, some sales reps have built an audience of their own on LinkedIn, but like an audience is not a network. It's not your people. It's not your Rolodex. There's a difference.
Yeah.
So on the personal side of Bronto, the idea is really what would a modern digital Rolodex look like for a sales professional and hopefully, other professionals down the road that auto updates, that auto plugs into the places you're engaging with people and helps you build a better network. You ever heard of Dunbar's number?
Dunbar's number. Yes. Okay. Dig into that. I just heard this like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. It's I can't remember exactly what era it's from, but it was a British psychologist who wrote about how humans can only maintain about 150 quote meaningful relationships in their head at any given time. And modern studies actually put that number lower. So I don't know about you, but 150 is a lot. I don't think I can maintain 150.
Define meaningful. There's some context there.
Yeah, like context of like they're people who if you reached out to, they would know who you are, they would jump to help, their birthday. Like they're not just professional contacts.
Yeah.
Like they're not a connection on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
right?
they're like your first tier network. Like got it. The phone numbers that you always transfer when you get a new iPhone.
Exactly. They're the ones you're like, they're the ones like the 4 or 5 founders that I call when I'm struggling as a founder. It's that group of people.
Got it.
So the core value promise for Bronto for individuals is we want to push Dunbar's number for you. If Dunbar's number is 100 or 150 in your head, we want Bronto's number to be 200 or 250.
How does it do that?
Or 500. Right now, I mean, it's classic like startup problem. Like we built this much of the this much we want to build, right?
Good.
Right now, it's really just it's a data tool to help you stay on top of your network. We're starting to
Yeah.
build now smarter tools to be better at like identifying key relationships, sending you smart reminders, doing things like, hey, Mac, like you've been talking to Steve a lot. We think Steve's an important relationship because XYZ context, but it's been 3 months since you spoke to him. Like, do you want to send him a text? Like, oh, yeah. How often does this happen to you where you meet someone cool and you're like, oh, Mac is awesome. I'd love to stay in touch with him. And then life gets in the way, work gets in the way, a year goes by, a year and a half goes by, you happen to see a
Consistently
LinkedIn
and
post.
constantly. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, yeah, Mac, I wanted to reach out to that guy, but it's been a year and a half. So now I have to do that awkward dance of like, hey, how's it going? It's been a long time. Like,
Yeah.
here's this awkward social interaction we're doing. So it's like, how do you stay on top of that network? How do you stay on top of, in touch with people? I always love the example that Rockefeller back in the 20s and 30s was known for. He would meet with someone and he would keep a little notebook where he would know that you had a kid that was about to go off to college or this or that. And he would, a year later, 2 years later, he'd be like, hey, Steve, how's so-and-so enjoying such and such university? And you're like, oh my God, how did this guy remember that? Like these human connections, we're like not very good at maintaining them. The internet and social media has made us really good at breadth of connection, but we've gotten worse at depth of connection. So we're trying to focus on depth of connection.
Depth of connection. Okay, we're going to double click. I'm pulling up right now, and let's just get into this. We're going to do 2 minutes where we dig into the tool, show everybody what it is, tease them enough to want to go click on it. This is my blank screen. So here's what I did on purpose. I onboarded to Bronto. I've done nothing with it yet. Probably, like a lot of people. Now your team onboarded me. I will say they did a great job. I have not done anything with it since then. What do I have in front of me? This beautiful canvas of data. What does it do for me?
Right now, it looks a little bit too much like a CRM. I'm going to be like the honest, I'm the founder. I'm looking at it. I'm like, I know what I want it to be, and I know what it is right now. And I see the delta when I look at this, right?
Yeah.
So right now, it's plugged into your Google, your calendar. It's plugged into your LinkedIn, and it's pulling in all the interactions and the people you have on there. So your LinkedIn connections. So that's what you're looking at right now.
So when you say interactions, let's go there for a second. It's describing who they are. Does it give me the actual interaction that I've had with them?
Not on LinkedIn yet. So it does that for email, for calendar. So like if you hit
real quick then.
Like if you hit / and you look me up, I should show up.
So go here, /.
Yeah. And then just search for me.
Okay, hold on.
I don't know /. Just yeah.
Okay.
No / in the search.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Goodness. / is just a hotkey that brings it up faster.
Okay, I'm just going to drive you nuts then.
There you go. So if you click there.
Okay, there you are.
So it's not pulling. Well, always good to find a bug when you're live.
This is live.
We can on a recording.
We can always edit it out if we need
to.
No,
honestly, don't.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think being more authentic, it's like that's kind of the whole thing we're trying to sell is that like
all day.
People don't want some perfect polished thing. They want the human, right?
Yeah.
So this should have merged with my email, which you have because you've emailed me to invite me to this podcast recording.
Yeah.
It didn't. That's the bug. It feels a bit like a personal CRM, right?
Sure.
You see that relationship strength there. That's one of the unique things. If you click back on details.
Yep.
So unlike a CRM, we're trying to understand like how well do you know this person? So we're looking at things like, have you worked with Mac? How much have you engaged with Mac? How long have you known Mac? Okay. So like we've been connected since July 8th, 2023. We've really never engaged until we DM'd a few weeks ago once or twice and this call essentially. Right? So we don't,
sure.
I would say like maybe we're not unfamiliar. Maybe we're like a weak connection, but we definitely don't know each other super well, right? If someone asked me for an intro to you, I'm like, yeah, I know Steve.
Yeah, Steve's
Steve well enough for that.
Right.
And that is at the core probably our biggest challenge is like we're trying to take this very human thing, which is how well does Mac know Steve, and turn it into a number essentially.
My guess is, and I know I can tell you're a visual person. Like if I could come here and do like a heat map on the relationships I have, and the ones that are important to me, separate them by different categories, and then sort of see like, and then get recommendations like, oh, if you want to increase this score, here's our recommendations.
That's exactly the sort of stuff we're heading towards. So right now the focus has been build the data foundation, start testing things like relationship strength and doing all the fun data science work that gets involved in that to try and figure it out. And it's like, what a strong relationship means to me might be different to you. So there's a lot of open-endedness we're figuring out there.
Sure.
You can build lists and segments of people. So you could build a list of all the sales leaders and keep that up to date.
Hey, I have an opportunity here. Look at this.
Yeah.
This makes me excited. What is this?
Did you add Dave as a lead?
I must have. That's funny because I'm like, oh yeah, Dave. It's like, of course. Okay, so I must have done this when I was demoing, right? So now I'm
So
going to
the cool
click
thing you
on.
can do here as well. So you've pulled Dave in because you're already connected to him.
Yes.
But we're also building it out now. So we have like a LinkedIn Chrome extension. So say you're looking at Dave's profile and you don't actually know Dave yet. You've got no connection with him. You can save Dave as a lead of like, this is someone that I want to be connected with. Maybe it's because I want to sell to them, or I just respect them, or I want to invite them on the podcast. But it's almost like this
Yep.
is both people that could be leads that you want to sell to, but it could
Yep.
also be like, these are people I want in my network that are not currently in my network. It's
Ah, I
almost
get
like
it. So this is
sales
sort
for
of my
your
like first
connections.
tier action. Like I'm going to go here and try and drain that sucker.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay.
We need to, once again, we're actually working on a huge UI overhaul that gets rid of this, like, not get rid of, but gives you other options in this table view. Because I think table view it's the easy way. It's what we're all used to as
Yeah.
sellers. We see it in CRMs and things like that. But I think there's a lot of really cool different interactions. Like we're starting to test a mobile app because this is something you want on the go. And you're like, oh, I just had lunch with Dave. I want to like quickly write down a note so I remember it next time he and
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
together. We're working on integrating with your Slack DMs and your WhatsApp DMs. So it's not just email and calendar, which will open up a whole new world of
Yes.
understanding who you're actually engaging with, right? Because your closest relationships, you're not LinkedIn DMing them, you're texting them, you're Slack
Yeah.
DMing them, you're talking to them in lots of different ways. So really there's like three challenges for us, right? Challenge one is like get the right data in across all the channels so you actually have a complete picture of your network.
Hmm.
Challenge number two is take that data and turn it into useful insights for you, relationship
Yeah.
strength, key relationship reminders, things like that. And then challenge three is be smart enough to give you recommended actions.
Okay.
We're starting to step out of step one, and that'll be an ongoing challenge, into step two, and then hopefully step three
How
shortly
did
after.
you arrive here? Because obviously you got feedback saying this is what people want. And I'm going to stop sharing here real quick just to get people focused back on your mug. But like, how did you arrive here? Because I think you've had a couple of goes at it, right? You had a community product that you brought to market.
Yep.
Somehow in that you arrived here and said, what people really need is this.
Yeah, so I mean, depends on how far back you wanna
Let's go
go.
all the way back. Yeah.
Um, but so I've been a founder for 13 years now, pretty much my entire adult life.
Mm-hmm.
Always a bootstrap founder until the ComStore go around. I started a company when I was 17, built around Minecraft, the game of all things, very community centric. Didn't realize I
Yeah.
was a community builder, but essentially I was building a community, and bootstrapped it to 12 people. Got lucky enough to exit it, and people hear an exit, and they're like, "Oh my god, how Richard? What did you make it?" It's like I was a bootstrap 23-year-old 12-person company. Like it wasn't a $1 billion exit,
We
but
call that minivan money.
yeah, it was and having no college debt for not having gone to college was definitely
Yeah.
icing on the
We
cake
could, we
on
could
that
have a
one.
whole
Being
episode
an
about
American,
why that's a good idea in today's age. But
yeah.
okay. So
But
you
that
you
set me down
you
the
built
path
it
of
and sold it at 23.
yeah. And when I reflected on that, I was like, okay, I sold it. What do I want to do with my life? I
Okay.
worked for the company I sold it to for like 6 months, hated it, realized I was a terrible employee,
Yeah. How much did you
as
sell the
as many
company for, if
founders
you don't
are.
mind me asking? You don't have to reveal that, but I always like to
Yeah,
dig a little bit.
about $1 million.
That's pretty damn good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like
About a
if it was
million
VC
dollars is
backed,
not
it's a
minivan
failure.
money. Um, so what'd you do with that $1 million?
Nothing, pretty much. Still
Sat
haven't
on it.
really spent any of it.
That's
It's
a
invested
good thing.
and sits there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's I took a little bit of it and paid myself just to living expenses to go back and keep building things and try new ideas. But
Yeah.
I think I lived fairly frugally.
Yeah. Let's talk about building new ideas. Okay. So you built this new idea. When you
Yeah.
build new ideas, you seem like the kind of guy who's going to have, five or six things circulating that you're sort of testing in
Oh
the
yeah.
background, and you bring one to the forefront like Bronto. How do you go through that testing and evaluation cycle as a founder to say, what do people really want? How do I learn what they want? How do I then give them most of what they want? And then how do I get them to buy the thing that they said they want? And then, you know what I'm saying? Because everybody says they want
Yeah.
something, but then they got to pay for it. And they're like,
It's it's a tricky one. I was like, we talk about the idea that people want this black and white answer of like, just do this. And there's an element of it depends on any advice or anything like this, right? My story will be different than someone else's, and neither one is right or wrong. I'd
yeah,
say the first half of my 13-year founder journey was very much I was just building things I liked. I didn't think of myself as a founder. I like making things, and sometimes I turned into businesses, sometimes they didn't. I was often the solopreneur who was solving my own problem, and sometimes there were other people with that problem. Sometimes I was just having fun and hacking away on weekends,
yeah,
which is I think that's a really good way. Like not a great way to build a VC backable business necessarily, but it's a great way just to start, just solve
yeah.
your own problem, right? Because you
Mhm.
know it, it's easier, you can get right to it. you're passionate about it. So there's like a sense of founder market fit when you're solving your own problems versus just trying
Yes.
to like look where there's opportunity. With ComStore specifically, ComStore started as a hackathon entry. So Product Hunt had a no code hackathon. This is 4 years ago now, where you had 3 days to build an MVP of a product using only no code tools. I didn't think I was going to build a company. I was just having fun and participating in a community I was a part of. And then
It can
I think it
happen
got like,
anytime.
yeah, I think it got like 51st or 52nd place out of 60 entries. Like I did not do well in the hackathon, like at all.
But then you took that idea and got investors?
I just kept working on it. And then it turned out like someone wanted to be a customer and then someone else wanted to be a customer. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, cool. We have a company. And then on a whim decided
Oh,
to
cool. We have a
apply to,
company.
yeah, I mean, that's so far. I've started, depending on how far you feel like you have to get down the starting journey to call it a company. I have started somewhere between 5 and 7 companies in the
Yeah.
last 13 years.
Yeah.
If you count ComStore as a success so far, and it's still alive, so I'll consider it a success. I've had 3 successes out of the say 7 starts.
It's good batting average.
Not bad, but you always talk about the 3, not the others, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Tell
so
me the
far,
worst other. Let's go down that path. What was the worst
oh,
business you had?
it's probably the worst because I spent the most amount of time on it before pulling out and stopping. And I think I was a little bit too like blinders on, ignoring signals that I should have killed it sooner.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, a friend and I started a business. We were basically building influencer powered video game stores. So we were basically enabling like Twitch streamers and YouTubers to partner with game developers to have a personal store link where I could be like, here are the 10 games I'm currently playing. And, I would get a percentage if you bought them.
Sure.
Great idea. And then the big game platforms, Steam, Epic Games, et cetera, basically launched that feature natively. And we're like, we can still beat them, and worked on it for another year. And, when the monopoly in the space decides to launch your product as a feature, it's a little hard when you're a 2-person bootstrap team.
Yeah. Well, that was similar to, I was at Reggie for 90 days doing a stint helping them. And we arrived there and we had a kickoff call on Monday. And I believe that Friday, OpenAI announced their release. And talk about an interesting time to be coming on and work with a company. It was like the thing that they built, and they just got a $16.8 million round for it, just opened up for fucking free to everybody. And I've never seen founders more deflated. I'm going to be honest, like great guys, right? But what's the message? What's the message Monday when everybody comes in and goes, hey, I got a question.
It's hard.
Is this little extension that we built now just essentially charging people money for the same thing and obviously it was not the same thing at all. But if
perception beats reality.
Yeah, I could have Haagen-Dazs ice cream, but if all of a sudden the free guy shows up down the street, and says, well, it's a little like that, but you got to kind of make it on your own. You got to go and mix all the flavors. They're going there.
Yeah.
For me, there's a certain boutique audience that would say, no, I want it delivered. I want it to be, put in a little box on my porch, and I want it to be exactly the flavors I want. And it's just not the time in the world right now. Well, it is and it isn't. We could talk about that all day too, where the masses are going to subscribe to that idea that $80 a month is going to help me write better emails and content. Even though the ROI could be infinite, really the ROI is, well, what is the use of me using this tool versus all the others from a time suck perspective? Not will it write a good email? Sure, it can structure a good email. I will tell you that I must have sent 2,000 personalized emails and to cold audiences, mind you. And I found that relevance at automation scale worked much better, which is not the result anybody wants to hear.
Yeah.
And so it's like a lot of the things that we want to do and that we want to pay money to do aren't yet working unless you have a RevOps team and all these people who are like, we're going to write 42 personalized emails and include embedded videos and send gifts to them every day. And I'm like, or you could just download Bronto and make it a little bit easier and do the human element of it instead of focusing completely on cold all the time. I did an exercise with my partner. So my partner in life is coming on board with the company here shortly. And we said, how about this? We've got a new product. We know exactly the fit. We're so fucking excited to tell everybody about it. And I was like, let's make a list. And she's like, good idea. And I'm like, let's make a list of the 100 people we know. And we started going through the list and we're like, not only will we make the list, we're going to write the list on how we think it can solve their specific problem. And that was the funnest exercise I've had on a Saturday or Friday offsite. And I said, you know what? It's cool. Now we get to go out one by one and say, here's what we're doing. I wanted to let you know. I thought of you. I think it can really do this for you. And I said, what's funny is we got to sell 100 all year to hit our $1.8 million quote on a new product. And if we just hit 50% on this, the rest should be relatively easy. I can use Bronto, go to use my first tier network, unlock that.
Quality, not quantity.
Oh my God. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to focus on this versus all of the other things, all of the idea of SEO being perfect, all the blogs being perfect. It's like, yes, but we're not there yet. That's me dicking around on the weekend. Sorry, dicking around. My God. That's the Midwest in me. Sorry. That's me.
All good.
Yeah, dicking around. I don't even know. It's such a weird farmer phrase, like dicking around. What does that even mean? Okay, it's me on the weekends.
Who knows where
I'm
it
going to
comes
learn
from?
SEO. I'm going to learn SEO. I'm going to now take our newsletters on LinkedIn, convert them to blogs on the website, understand what backlinking is. I'm tired, right? And so that's as much SEO as we've got right now. And I've got to be okay with that as a founder because you have competing priorities all the time where you can, right after this call, I'm getting on with Sam Dunning. We're going to talk about SEO. Can't wait. Do we need it right now? I don't know. There's a lot of things we can spend $4,000 a month on. Is SEO going to convert? Yes. Is it the thing we need to do right now? I don't know. So the question to you is, why is anybody listening right now saying, I'm going to go, or I've gone to Bronto and downloaded it? Why do I need to not only download it, but start using it right now?
I think so. I had a similar question from someone the other day that was like, has someone tried to build this before? And it was like, they brought up an example that someone tried to build a product very similar to this like 9 years ago and it didn't work. Who knows? There's so many reasons why things don't work. You can never attribute it to a single thing.
Sure.
But I think a lot of it's just timing. I think 4 years ago, sales teams and sellers just wouldn't have cared about this because you could have a halfway decent product with a halfway decent cold outbound strategy. And if you did it at enough scale, you would hit quota, right? You send enough emails, you made enough calls.
The glory days.
You hit enough ads. Like that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So in my experience, when I talk to sellers and sales leaders about what we're building, I would say a third are like, I need this right now. I get it. What we're doing right now is not working. Sign me up right now. A third are interested. Their interest is peaked. They want to have a conversation. And a third are like, no, I've got AI tools. The calls, the emails, like we're going to just do more of what we know.
Yes.
And hey, if it's working, no shame.
Yeah, sure.
I personally don't think it's going to work for very long. I think it's like driving towards a cliff and knowing you're driving towards a cliff. And instead of trying to turn the car, you're trying to make it go faster. But it's a sense of, I don't want to say desperation, but there's a sense of something has to work.
Yeah.
And I keep using this tagline that tactics are temporary and your network is forever, right? I don't care. Like you can read some post on LinkedIn about this is my cold call tactic. This is my cold email tactic. And that might work if it's the right industry, the right timing. But by the time it's a publicly shared tactic, it's probably not super effective. It reminds me of, there's an AI tool last summer that came out that was like, it'll find your prospects' podcast appearances and automatically personalize an email based on what they said in those podcasts. Great idea.
Yeah.
But that went viral in like, a little LinkedIn bubble. And I would get like 12 emails a day using the same podcast recording and the same person. They were like, clearly were using the same tool to reference the same thing. Kind of goes back to your before. Like now it's not personalized. It's just the same. It's like human relationships just never go out of style, I guess is the reason why people get excited by it. And there's value in it right now. You don't have to build something. It's not like SEO where you got to do it now so it pays off in 6 months or 9 months or a year. It's like you already know people and your network already knows people and your investors already know people and your advisors already know people. Yes, you should also focus on building your network so it's a sustainable strategy, but you can get value tomorrow, not next month, not next quarter, tomorrow.
I dream of this. And so I'm listening. And so if I could pitch you on what I'd love to see your software do, and then we're going to transition into content and LinkedIn and a little bit about your personal life here, is I would love to, I envision logging in. I see this big screen, kind of like what's in front of me right now, and it activates this neural network. And there's all these little points and it says, do you want to activate your network? And you go, yes, click. And it goes, and it says recommended actions. Mac is traveling today over in Russia. Send him a quick note recommending a place that you visited 5 years ago and saying best of luck on the business trip. Those kind of things. Like, and then doing that and then scoring, like if you get a response and then going, like it's not easy, right? I mean, this is like video games.
It's a fine line because of the personalization problem we mentioned before, right? It's like suddenly if everybody who knows Mac has Bronto or enough people do, and they're all seeing the same data point of, ooh, Mac's traveling right now. It's like the birthday messages you get on LinkedIn, right? It's like it used to mean
but it would only be relevant because you traveled there, right? So not everybody else has been to Russia. So if it crossed the data points that you historically have been there in your Google locations, and then said, because I brought that data.
That's a great point.
there's an idea for you. And so like by bringing calendaring into it, you
Yeah.
actually get a journey map of where people have been. And so like there's a little hidden nuance to bringing calendar in. Well, why would I bring calendar in?
One of
A
our
history of
most
where they've
requested
been and where they're going.
features is similar to the Trump, but it's basically if people want to go into Toronto and say, I'm going to be in New York next week, which 3 people should I get coffee with?
Oh, I
Like
love that.
similar sort of thing of like, oh, well, Mac's in New York right now. Mac or so-and-so lives in New York, or, hey, it's been 9 months since you spoke to this person and they're also in New York. And
Yep.
there's lots of things like that. A lot of it comes down to, there's so many fun things we could do. It comes down to, can we get enough insights to do it? Can we do it in a privacy centric, okay way? We're not trying to be like Facebook 2.0, just like consume data for the sake of consuming data. And can we be smart enough so that it's actionable? Because what we found is if you give someone an insight or an action, even if you give them 10, if just one of them is wrong, they won't trust the other 9.
Yeah. Not today they won't, because it's the attention economy is going to say, I got to move on. Like they'll download your tool, and then if it doesn't do what they want it to in the first 2 or 3 minutes, they're done. And it's like it's everything's 2 or 3 minutes, whether it's this podcast, whether it's me trying to watch a YouTube video, like 2-3 minutes max, right? Where I've got the attention to decide, does this have impact on my life? Will it make it better? And that's a fun time. And I try to be unbiased when people go, oh, the world's changing and we're all going to die. I'm like, God, this is the funnest time to be alive ever. We can do anything. I can learn Mid-Journey at 4 a.m. when I wake up on a Monday in 2 hours and go, oh, I finally get it. And now I can do all this crazy stuff that I couldn't do before. And I think it's great, but we're going to simplify things down here and go on a content basis. You are active on content. Those people who are listening, who are either founders or not founders, or CEOs or not CEOs, what is your approach to content? When you think about it, where does it sit in your gut? Some days, for instance, I can't stand it. Like it's the thing I don't want to do more than anything. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to feel less than if I don't get enough likes. I don't want to have to worry if this post is going to convert or not. I don't want to see the same goddamn feed of the same posts that look like the same things with the same pods. And then I go, wait a second. That's the wrong way to look at this. It's just like when you wake up and you go, my life's terrible. It's the filter and the lens. And so I change my feed. I look at it differently. I get inspiration from other channels and go, I think this is the most exciting time ever in LinkedIn. And this damn video feature I keep hearing about, which, I mean, selfishly, I feel like I should have it. That's in beta, is now going to change the LinkedIn game if they release a video product. What is your gut? Where does it sit? Walk me through it. Just give me the state of the union on content in your life.
We're talking about content specifically, or content in regards to LinkedIn? Or
yeah, great question. Content from a social perspective, and how organic content in written form or video form on YouTube, LinkedIn, those platforms versus website content, etc.
So for context, 9 months ago, I wasn't active on LinkedIn at all.
Yes.
I tweeted a little bit. I posted when there was company news, but I was a classic founder who like only posted company news. I didn't even have a LinkedIn account when I started the company. I created a LinkedIn account because an investor said it's kind of weird that you don't have an online presence. So I was like, all right, I'll make a LinkedIn account. Fine, whatever. I haven't had a Facebook account in 10 years. I don't have a TikTok. I don't have an Instagram. I don't have a Snapchat. I am the least social media native 30-year-old in the history of 30-year-olds.
That's kind of cool.
And I just don't like it. It's never been interesting to me. I'm also the person that, in high school, if I had to talk in front of the class, I was like, I cannot do this. I have no interest, not at all. No thanks.
Introvert.
I just shared that as like, hardcore introvert. Yeah. I am totally fine sitting in my apartment, hanging out with my cats, cooking for myself, and not interacting with another human being in real life for multiple days in a row. No issues.
So do podcasts drain you? Be honest. Like, I mean, I suppose afterwards you're probably
absolutely.
Like, oh God.
I think all video calls drain me. I think video calls actually drain me more than in-person interactions, because there is like an element of, there's like an uncanny valley-ness to it where it's like, I feel like I actually have to work harder to like, I have to make sure I'm looking at the camera, and like, I can't just like be a person. I have to be like a person in a little box.
Oh, yeah.
And you find yourself like accidentally looking at yourself and you're like, oh, I don't want to see that. Like, no, I'm trying to look at the person I'm talking to. Like, there's just like a weird, like, there's like extra mental gymnastics going on in my head, basically, compared to other like in-person stuff.
That's interesting. And I I wouldn't change it. I think it's like one of those things where if I was a coach and that's what I fixed, I would be like, I wouldn't change it. I think that's at the core of who you are, and the quirkiness is sort of the charm behind the lack of
Well, that
enthusiasm for having to show up every day on social.
I think that leads perfectly into my feelings about content. So 9 months ago, I was like, all right, I got to start taking this LinkedIn thing seriously. And for other context, we were in the middle of pivoting our business. So I was like, all right, I got to use LinkedIn. Originally, I'm going to use it as a place to test messaging and start to talk to our new ICP, because we're moving from community managers to salespeople. I have a huge network of community managers. I don't know a lot of salespeople. I got to start to get to know them and talk to them and know their pain points and do
Yeah.
the research. So the first 5-6 months, like basically all of last year, second half of last year, I used my LinkedIn as a test bed of like testing messaging. I was basically, I don't think people even realized it, I was basically doing product development work through my content. Where I would basically
Yeah.
like I had a feature idea. I would write it out as if it were like, not a feature,
Fact.
but here's what I would
Yeah.
do. See if people would respond to it, test things in comments. And it was incredibly helpful. Led to like other in-depth conversations. It's like our product is significantly better today because of that than if I hadn't done that. And the side effect is I almost tripled my LinkedIn audience in the process of doing that. So nice little side effect. The goal wasn't to grow the audience. The goal wasn't to sell. It was really just, so I think I've got a pretty good system now. And I think content's critically important. I'm a big believer in social selling and the people first mentality, that people want to know who they're buying from. They don't care what brands have to say. They care what the people behind the brands have to say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I love it. I don't wake up and I'm not excited to write content, but I've built enough of a system for myself and almost like a sixth sense, or like train that muscle that I can do it. It's like, it's the classic case of like, it's not motivation, it's dedication.
You're a systems guy, aren't you?
Yes. If I don't write it down or build a plan for it, it's not going to happen.
I was listening to a gentleman yesterday. Gosh, I wish I could remember his name. I do a lot of podcast listening on the weekends, man. Like I'm a 1.5Xer. I probably digest 50 hours of podcasts a week.
I don't listen to podcasts at all, which is kind of funny.
Wow. Well, hey, you create instead of consume on the podcast level. And I think there, by the way, Chris Walker once said to me, that reminded me, I said, hey, what are your favorite LinkedIn creators or, whatever, writers? And at the time he said, like, he goes, I'm not consuming any content. I don't want it to distract from what I'm really focusing on in terms of what I think about it. And so if I read too much, it's going to distract.
I kind of think it subconsciously influences, and you end up copying without realizing you're copying instead of being yourself. I don't fully not consume it, but I sort of agree with that perspective, actually.
Yeah. Well, and I did that for a while, and I will tell you, as a a guy who has a company who that's what we do. I mean, it was tough because I got to pay attention to it every day, and when everybody else is complaining about the algorithm, we're trying to actually figure out what it is, and be okay with it not working in our favor all the time, and that's the tough part. Because to your point, you got to fail. Can't write viral banger posts all the time, and I think part of the problem people have in a post is not only getting people to like it. That's great, right? Getting into your core audience to like it, et cetera. That's a whole another conversation. How do you get people to want to take action from content without seeming salesy?
In our case, in my case, I think a lot of it, I think we're kind of lucky. I just want to put that kind. We sell to salespeople, which I think makes this easier than necessarily other ICPs. We can sell by showing. I get on sales calls all the time where someone's like, I want to learn how your team does things because I see it. I see it happening. I see it live. I see it through your content. It's like, it's visible. It's like, we don't even have to, it's very soft selling. And it creates things like Neil Weitzman recommending behind the scenes. Like it's more of a focus on creating a network that like is almost out there doing the selling for us rather than me having to do the hard sell. Now, if I see an opportunity for the hard sell, of course I'm going to go for it. It's on like a comment or a post, like ask a question. I'm like, hey, like I can actually solve that problem for you. Like I will jump in and do that because like, it's like that classic 5% versus 95%, right? If someone shows and puts their hand up and says, I'm in the 5% who's ready to buy, like you should get in there and sell to them. They've put their hand up, right? But most people are in the 95%. So your focus is really just on like, it's not pushing to them, it's pulling. In my experience, people will put their hand up. If your content is doing a good job of speaking to their problem, sharing your thoughts on the solution, and alluding to the fact that you have, ways of solving that problem, people will put their hands up.
Yeah.
And they will self, identify.
Do you
So there's not a
take
lot of
you
hard selling.
do you take YouTube pretty seriously?
Um, I so fun fact, I actually was a Twitch streamer full time for about a year and a half, and tried to take YouTube seriously as like a full time content creator as like my primary income stream
Oh wow.
years
Walk me
ago
down
now.
that path. Wow. See, that's something that to
Oh,
me seems like worse than being a
I
realtor.
I hated it. It was awful. It was so bad for my mental health. It was would not recommend.
Yes.
And a lot of the full-time creators in that space, this is 10 years old now, were all miserable. They all
Yeah.
had to put on the face for the cameras. They were terrified about taking a vacation because if they get off the content flywheel, their audience would move elsewhere. It was like
Yep.
there are very few creators that get so big that they can be like too big to fail and just do whatever they want. A lot of them
Yes.
are just like stuck on this hamster wheel.
Yeah.
But it's that actually helped a lot with the public speaking fear, and I think was a good foundation for a lot of what I'm doing now. As a company, we are starting to take YouTube more seriously. We just hired our first full-time video editor and video producer.
Awesome.
We're leaning heavily into video content. I was at the stat that YouTube is the second biggest search platform after Google.
Yes.
Which I was like, yeah, that's how I use Google. That's how I search. I go to YouTube first to look for it, not Google very often.
Yeah. Well, and on top
right?
of that, if you go to Google and you type in a search, that's pulling in those videos.
Yep.
Right there on the secondary page. So
exactly.
Keep going with me. How did you start YouTube, and how do you view that differently than LinkedIn?
Well, so I did YouTube like way back when. I was a bit of a gaming content creator, and I did 3D modeling and art. So I was just making things I liked making, turning into videos, learning video editing, that sort of stuff. In hindsight, had zero strategy. I was just posting videos and hoping I would somehow become a YouTube creator, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
It got just big enough to be just enough money to be my full-time job, but not a dime
That's
more.
Pretty
than that.
good when you consider that the revenue. I mean, what is it? Like $8 for every 1,000.
Oh, but most of the money came from like Twitch streaming, and you had audience fans who would like buy merch or stuff like that. So it was like, I was a case of like the classic, like I didn't have a huge audience, but I had that 1,000 true fans who were, willing to spend $2 a month each to support me. And that was enough to really offset the low ad revenue.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Our team now, we haven't done a lot with YouTube yet. We are just starting to. Okay. I'm starting to do more video content on LinkedIn. And it's funny, you mentioned before, like the leaving in the fact that I'm uncomfortable on video or that I'm introvert.
Yeah.
I didn't intend to, but Raina, our video editor, who's brilliant at just like knowing exactly how a video should be cut. Like I'll just sit down, I'll just record my thoughts for 10 minutes and she'll turn it into a 2-minute video. I'm like, wow, that makes me look really fucking smart. I did not sound smart when I was recording that video. This is great.
Editors are gold, man. They're so good.
Yes. But she'll leave in, like I'll missay something like, hey, Raina, oops, don't leave that in. That was a mistake. And she'll leave that in. And at first I was like, I don't like that, but I've come to realize people like it. There's an authenticity of like, it doesn't seem, I'm not reading from a script. It doesn't seem like I'm not, because I'm not.
Yeah, man, reading from scripts sucks.
Yeah, sucks. It's me. It is just me, just being me, just recording a video and other little things. This painting behind me, which I need to hang, so it's actually like centered and not.
Did you paint that?
Off tilt? I didn't. I wish I did. People ask that all the time, which I feel like I should take it as a compliment that people think I painted that.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. It's beautiful. Love the colors.
But unintentionally, this is now the background for every one of my videos. That's why you were talking about changing backgrounds. I've had multiple people say that they're scrolling LinkedIn and they see that thumbnail and they're like, they see that yellow background, like that's a video. That's a video from Matt. Cause it's just like, it stands out in the feed, which has been interesting. So I think the big difference though, to bring it back to the original question between YouTube and LinkedIn, YouTube is the only social network where you choose what to watch, right? It's a storefront. Here's a bunch of thumbnails. What do you want? Whereas social media, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever, is more things are fed to you. So you have to play into the algorithm a bit more versus playing to your audience. And I think that's the big difference, where it's like having that recognizable background that you recognize when you're scrolling the feed makes you more likely to pause. Whereas YouTube, you can build the brand more around the channel. Like there are YouTube channels I'm subscribed to. I will just go straight to their channel and check if they have a new video. I won't wait for it to show up in my feed because I don't want to miss it in the feed. I'll just check, does this channel have a new video? People don't really do that on LinkedIn, in my experience. They don't go to someone's profile like, oh, did Steve post a new video yet? I want to go see if I didn't miss it. So that user dynamic, I think, changes the type of content and the approach to content quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, for me, video is, the way we view it at least, is we make video for YouTube, we adapt it for LinkedIn now. And I think that's just the easy play, right? Which is like, instead of just making video, we're like, let's make intentional video on LinkedIn. Let's work with our clients to make sure that we're building Q&A, FAQ libraries, good explainer videos, and just an easy way to navigate the site. But I always say, guys, don't worry about the site. No one's really going to your YouTube channel yet. We need to
Yeah.
just get them to want to watch some of the videos and be sure that we're being keyword relevant and those things that matter so much. And I think if I had any observation at scale about content right now, is a lot of people, we get it. Like in the last 3 years, like Bravo, like seriously, a lot of people writing content. Nobody at scale, other than people who know what they're doing, is really writing for SEO. And I always say, like, you can write all the beautiful words you want and have everybody go like, fuck yeah. But unless that shit shows up on Google, it's gone, man. The second that post is on LinkedIn, is gone. It is not like this thing on
That's
YouTube
the other
where
thing about LinkedIn, right? It's gone.
gone.
YouTube, as you said, it's just, you can get, I have YouTube videos that I posted 8, 9 years ago
You're probably
on
still
my like old
monetizing on it.
personal, like, yeah, like I'll once someone be like, hey, you got $5 from YouTube. I'm like, what?
Yeah, refresh
Okay,
the
it's not a
thumbnail,
huge
new
amount,
title,
but
like boom, back
it's
to life.
I had a video like 6 months ago. I think it had gotten 10 or 15,000 views, and it's like initial lifespan, like 8 years ago.
Yeah,
For whatever reason, it got picked up again, and it got another 40,000 views in like 4
amazing.
days. Tons of comments, and like people commenting me like, "Oh, I love this video. Anyone know why this guy doesn't post anymore? What happened to him?" Because I haven't posted a video there in
Yeah,
8 years. I was like, it's wild. Like people from 8 years ago still, like, even I actually, my first business was built around Minecraft, and there was a social network. I think it's still around, but kind of dead, called Planet Minecraft. It was a place to share your Minecraft creations, talk about Minecraft. I'm like really nerding myself out here.
yeah, I love it though.
um, I had posted a creation I'd made there. It was like a map you could download and use as your own Minecraft map. I had someone reach out to me on LinkedIn probably 4 months ago now, being like, hey, the download link here is broken. Do you by chance still have a copy of it? And I was like,
Oh my
I
god,
posted this
yeah.
in 2011 on this website, this piece of content. People were still like, hey, where's the download link? It doesn't work anymore.
We've used a strategy recently that it helps us understand what we should be doing. And so, for example, we look for searches that are kind of relevant to the spaces we're doing that have a lot of search
Yeah.
and not a lot of competition on YouTube. And there's tools out there. We use vidIQ. It's a great content creation tool in general to figure out what people are searching for, by the way. It kind of scores your video. I mean, it's AI. Think about like Lavender or Reggie for YouTube, right? Like your title score, like, do you have the right keywords? Like, is this thing right? So I highly recommend, if you're going to do YouTube, don't even start it without vidIQ. Not affiliate,
Okay.
nothing. Like, it is that important. And what it
I
does,
love, by the way, you now need to bring on, or I need to have a podcast now where I bring on the founder of vidIQ in order to have this like give a penny, take a penny. Because Neil
yes,
recommended Bronto, which brought me to you. And now I need
yes,
to go talk to the vidIQ founder and need to like keep it going.
it is so wild, man, because like all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I wish I had this tool when I was
Yeah.
selling, because now I know what everybody's questions are. Because then not only do you see what they're searching for, you see what the specific questions are. And so I was like, hey, you know what? We're going to make a video and it's going to be called AI versus SDR cold call battle. Why? Because those specific terms like line up perfectly. And so I contacted an AI voice company and and we're going to put this nice little 3-minute piece of content. And we got the AI voice company to sponsor it, like, and not tilt in their favor of like, oh, this is the actual results. And so now that piece of content that we know everybody's searching for, also we got to hurry up and make, because people are searching for it right now, not maybe in 2 months. And so it's also like you either need to be nimble enough to be like flip on the iPhone and go, or have a really fucking good production team and an editor like you, where you can be like, here's the relevant stuff. Here's what we want to talk about versus what people's questions are. Let's make this video, put the keywords in here. We'll answer the questions. Guaranteed, this thing goes to the top of Google within seconds. And here's the test I did, Mac. So newsletters, which I love newsletters. I read about 6 of them religiously on a weekly basis.
That's a
SEO,
lot
big
on
time.
average, I think, for most people.
I know it's too high. Justin Welsh, a few others that are more personal, right?
Yeah.
And just because I like the structure and the flow and studying them, it's a research project for me. So probably why there's more. The SEO of that is huge. Now, I wrote a newsletter called How to Write a LinkedIn Newsletter. There's a lot of them out there. And the newsletter was how to write a LinkedIn newsletter. But I said, how to write the perfect LinkedIn newsletter that converts to sales. And so I had to play around with the keyword. Now it's the #1 search item within 2 weeks on how to. And then so we then creatively said, what if we used a tool like Score App, which I love that tool, by the way. You can literally go there, create a score. You can use AI and say like, oh, I want to create a score on like people's ability to assess their leveraging their personal network. How well do you do it? Right. It says, here's the 10 questions. They answer it, spits out the results. You get to put a little YouTube video like, hey, it's Mac. Thanks for taking the quiz. Da da da. You can spin it up in an hour.
Yeah.
And we did that. And we had 111 people take a quiz. We have their scores. We delivered it to them. And I'm just like, guys, just like the game has changed. This isn't about using SalesLoft and getting the perfect subject line anymore. This is about getting out there with content. And if you're not competitive in it,
it's about pulling instead of pushing.
There you go, man. Pull them in. Magnetic. Here we go. This is us, right?
Yep.
And when you make that content, and nobody else is doing that stuff right now, and when people say there was an opportunity on LinkedIn 5 years ago, it is nothing compared to the opportunity B2B has on YouTube right now.
I will say, even if other people are doing it, like you said, there's nobody else is being you. When it comes to email, everybody else is being the same. They're using the same tools, the same AI tools to write the emails, the same personalization tips, the same templates. Email doesn't give you an opportunity to be you. I think that's also the big thing about content is you have to lean into the thing about the content that makes it you. Whether it's the little awkwardness of like, oops, I fucked up that line and Raina left it in, so it makes the video more actually the way Mac speaks rather than this polished CEO, or it's the yellow background or whatever it is. There has to be this element of like the people in it, right? I mean, like there's YouTube channels, examples of them being bought and they change out the host and then they just die instantly. It's like nobody gives a shit about the content. There's like they get to know the person. They get to trust the person. They care about the person's opinion.
Big time.
So I think there's an element of like you have to put the people and the personal thing into it. What makes you you? And like you mentioned Chris Walker earlier. He does the very like calm, well put together CEO who knows what he's talking about, like the trusted, like almost like sage type source. That's not me. And if I tried to do that, it would feel so inauthentic. You would be able to tell. You wouldn't trust it. And it's like, and for me, it's like the trust is that I'm just me. I'm not trying to bullshit you. I'm just being me. There's awkward pauses and accidental swear words and whatever. And that's what makes it me. And that creates trust in a different way, but it's like this human connection and trust because the content matches the person making it. And I've seen a lot of people, they buy templates or courses from whatever creator on how to do LinkedIn content or YouTube content, but then their content looks like the person who sold them the course's content and doesn't feel like it's their content.
There we go. Frameworks. Well, and well-intended, right? We as humans always go, I learned something. I'd like to show you what I learned, everybody. So you can validate that what I learned is actually not only good, but that I can help you too. Because as humans,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh no, I love it. Like this is, hey, I've got a rock, and when I hammer it, it makes a thing. You should do it too. And then like, no, my way is better than your way. Like your rock sucks. Fuck your rock. Like this has been since the Adam and Eve bullshit or whatever. Like this has been since the beginning of time that we have had different opinions on how to do things and different ways to arrive at similar destinations. And I think what I love about your product is you're unabashedly you, and you're not like, oh, we're the latest AI product. Like, no, it actually is kind of like this right now. And I wish it were like
we're kind of the anti-AI product.
Yeah, but here's what it does. It actually leverages something that you can make money off of, which is not a cold list of 7,000 people. It is people who today would answer your call and say like, oh, hey, Mac, like, yeah, I'd love to have you on the podcast. I do know that founder. I might feel comfortable let me think about it, right? Like I want to figure out how to frame it versus
there's a human in the loop, which is why it works. We've had a few people buy our product and say they want some AI thing to just like, let me plug in who I want to sell to, and you should be able to go out and ask my network for intros. And it's like, okay, if we just go and ask, like, if we just like, and some guy really like, he gave us like, he's like, just do this. He's like, look, like I used your product and I identified that Steve knows 32 people I want to sell to. Can you just ask? AI should just ask Steve for 32 intros. I was like, okay, first off, if you ask Steve for 32 intros in one go, Steve's going to be like, whoa, what the hell? No, I'm not helping you. You're overusing the social capital here, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why an intro from Steve works so well is because Steve has put thought into being, should I introduce Mac to this person? Yes, I think it's worth their time. I'm going to use social capital on it. Boom. Yeah. And that's why, our like core marketing line is like cold calls, cold emails. If you're doing a really good job, you're converting like 1, 2, 3, maybe 5% if you're like best in class.
That's good.
Referrals, word of mouth, intros convert at like 70 to 75% on average. So it's like people are so worried about scale because that's what sales teams have been trained on, that they can't even, sometimes they look at our tool and they're like, well, how's it going to help me do things at scale? And we're like, well, it's actually not, because you don't need the scale if you do it this way. And that unlearning is actually probably the hardest thing in our like go to market right now, because people are so used to, sales tools have trained people to push button, get value, push button, get an interest data, push button, power dial, push button, start a sequence. Not like, oh, I'm going to talk to Steve. What should I talk to Steve about? Like take that extra second and just give a shit. Like that's like, our goal is to help our goal with Bronto is to help you give a shit about your network and treat it like an asset and not an audience.
Not to sound like Stephen Bartlett, but damn, you know, what's the one takeaway you have here? Actionable advice for everybody that they can implement today. I think you just sort of gave it to them. That was like gospel, man. Preach. That they could go away and take away today and apply it, and then DM you and say, dude, thank you so much. That changed my life.
Oh,
change my life is a little dramatic. How about this? Change my productivity.
Change something. I don't know. I would say from a selling perspective, one, if you're not already building a personal brand, building content, like just start. It's hard. It's weird. It takes a long time to figure it out. Like I said earlier, I was so uncomfortable doing it 9 months ago. There are still days where I'm like, I click post on a post and I'm like I don't post selfies because I will never do that. That's just not me. Hard. But there's just things that, so you just do it. You got to build that model, build that consistency, figure out your voice. Worst case, you will get better at writing and you will learn things about yourself. Best case, you'll build an audience, you'll start a company, you'll make new friends, you'll meet new peers, you'll get a new job, you'll sell more, you'll make more commission. It's like the open-ended value on building a network, building content, and it's a give and a take, right? Building a network is much more of like a going out one-to-one. Content is like scalable a bit. It's like one-to-many. Doing both in conjunction, the amount of opportunities to open up for me. I've always been the founder that didn't really have a network. I didn't come from the traditional tech world, the traditional Silicon Valley. I was like the little bootstrapper, solopreneur, my own little bubble of startups. Like I said, I had no LinkedIn 4 years ago. My professional life for the next 10 years is definitively going to be better, no matter what happens, because of the last 9 months of content work I've put in.
There you go. That's a big takeaway. My last question for you is, where did you get that sweater?
I actually don't know. Where is it from?
Are there deer on there? Lauren. That's there I'm very curious. It's a great sweater.
It looks like it's birds and some guys and
like some hunters grass. Or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's like some bird hunters actually. Something like that.
Yeah, it's great.
No dead birds, as far as I can tell, but just the motif.
Yeah, between that and the art, it's you come in and you make a very loud statement of "This is who I am," which I love. And that.
Over on the corner, you've got to figure out how to get him into frame.
Oh, that's so great, Bronto. There we go. You guys have a great logo. You have a great feel. You have a great vibe, Mac. You definitely are magnetic in how you do things. It's obviously why I was like, "Hey, dude, hop on the podcast." And so I'm glad I not only started hearing your name, but understood your mission, and getting you on here and diving deep into it for an hour was fantastic. I really understand what you do now. I understand as a person, your feel on it. So thank you for spending some time with us, man. Right. Yeah. Where can everybody find you before you go take like 10 deep breaths and go back into deep introversion mode?
I mean, on LinkedIn. And if you send me a note, I will send you a fun fact about dinosaurs, and I will not pitch slap you. That's my promise.
I love it. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for tuning in to Magnetic. This is the Magnetic Podcast. You were on here. Stephen Mack. What's up, everybody? Go back and listen to this download episode. Do what you got to do. Forward it to a friend. Click and subscribe, because following this channel means you're learning consistently, and it's going to make it to your inbox, not something you have to search out in the LinkedIn feed, because God forbid it would never show up. Mac, thanks for taking some time today, brother. I really appreciate it. Best of luck with Bronto. I'm glad I'm a paying subscriber, my friend. And thanks for making me see more value in the tool today as well.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
All right. Peace out, everybody.